What's going on, fellas? So as promised, there are four more top tips to curb your hunger when you are on a diet. We already talked about choosing high satiety foods, high index foods from the Reset Food List from the Built by You transformation program. So we're going to discuss quickly here four more strategies that you can use. Okay, so we'll jump straight into number two, and number two is to avoid liquid calories. So skipping things like full sugar soda or orange juice when you're hungry, because they contain a ton of calories. I say a ton, they contain a lot of calories, but they don't do much to actually satisfy our hunger, right? We can drink them really quickly. I can gun a can of Coke in less than 5 seconds if I'm really working for it, and then before I know it, I've had 140 calories and I'm not feeling any more full than I would do before I'd had it. So we want to try and limit liquid calories, and that also includes something like a protein shake. Protein shake is a supplement, and it's a tool that we can use if we are short on time. That said, if you are trying to curb hunger, you want to try and limit liquid calories as much as possible for the reason I just mentioned. So you want to try and rely on whole foods, things that take up a lot of real estate in your stomach, things that take a long time to eat, things that require you to use a knife and fork and sit down at the table and you eat from a plate, and that you have to chew, because not only do they give us the physiological feeling of fullness, but they also give us the psychological feeling of fullness because they take time for us to eat them. Obviously, when it comes to having a can of Coke or orange juice or a protein shake, that's the kind of thing that you can gun down and not really notice, or you can sip it slowly and again not really notice and not really feel full. So if you are feeling hungry, try and limit liquid calories. So that's number two. Number three, the advice here is to eat evenly spaced out meals. For the most part, if you can eat every 3 to 4 hours, normally sized, evenly spaced out meals, you're going to avoid ever getting absolutely ravenous throughout the day. Because if you skip breakfast, what tends to happen is that we end up overeating because we're so hungry by the time we get to lunch that we're like, fuck, I'll eat anything, just give it me, I'll eat that and I'll eat this and then I'll just keep going. And before we know it, we've kind of slipped into eating 1,000 calories that we hadn't planned to eat. So oftentimes people say that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That's not necessarily true. It's a bit of a blanket statement that this requires more nuance than that. But if you are finding yourself to be hungry, try the strategy of eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack, or an evening snack, or supper, or whatever, something like that before you go to bed, so that you always are having some form of feeding. So even though you might never feel super full and super satisfied and breathing audibly because you've eaten so much food, what you'll end up doing is mitigating ever feeling ravenously hungry. And then it's more predictable, your hunger is more predictable if you end up eating more evenly spaced out meals, okay? It also stops you from feeling like, shit, I need something to eat right now because I don't know when my next meal's coming. If you have a planned meal, then you can look at your watch and say, I've just had a meal, so I know within 2 hours and 59 minutes I'm going to have my next meal. And so you can plan out and kind of manage your hunger that way as well. Okay, so that's number three. Number four is to note when you're the hungriest. So this is kind of in conjunction with number three. I know that personally, when I first wake up in the morning, I'm not really that hungry. So I can probably go till maybe 10, 11 o'clock, do a lot of work, feel super productive, have a couple of coffees, go and train, walk the dog, before I even get to feel particularly hungry. And then I still space out my meals throughout the day, because I know that my hunger typically comes later on in the evening when I've finished work for the day, I've finished training, I've done all the other things that I need to do, and I sit down with Jen in front of the telly, and that's when I typically feel the hungriest. So I can shift all my meals, still eat 4 meals if I wanted to. I can also eat 3 slightly smaller meals and reserve some greater amount of calories for the evening. The thing to watch out for there is to make sure that you don't eat so much food so close to bedtime that it disturbs your sleep, because you're spending so much time and energy digesting food. So that is strategy number 4. And strategy number 5 is one that I ask you guys and everybody else that I've ever worked with when it comes to trying to create a calorie deficit, is to look ahead into the week and see which is more reasonable. Is it easier to increase output or reduce input? If you've got a relatively light week and you're feeling hungry, you don't need to reduce the amount of calories you're eating. In order to create the calorie deficit that you need to lose body fat, you might just increase your steps by 1,000 steps per day. You might just go for a bike ride every 2 days, or use the Peloton or something like that. You can increase the output so you never have to touch your food. If, however, you look ahead on a Sunday night and your work calendar is chock-a-block with meetings and travel and phone calls and that kind of stuff, then yeah, it might be unfeasible that you can't add more output. So what you need to do is lower the input coming in, and that's when maybe you change your food. But if you don't have to do that, I would advise that you don't do that. If you've got a little bit of flexibility, you can take a little bit from your input and a little bit from your output to make up that calorie deficit. But again, there's lots of different ways that you could slice that. But don't limit the food if you don't have to limit the food. I would posit that 99 times out of 100, you would answer that you prefer to do a little bit more exercise because you get more bonuses from it, and limit the amount of times that you have to take away food in order to create the calorie deficit. So they're the next 4 in the list here. Just to recap, we talked about avoiding liquid calories, eating evenly spaced out meals, noting when you're the hungriest and sliding your meals closer towards that time of the day, and to look ahead to see whether you should increase your output or reduce your input to make sure that you're meeting your calorie deficit needs.